The Tipping Point is the first episode of Kirstie Alley's Big Life, and I have already watched and reviewed several episodes after this because for some reason I thought the fifth episode was the first episode. I think I put the wrong DVD in the player. That's the only thing I can kind of think of that happened. So while I'm watching this now for the first time, I have seen 4 episodes that come after this, so it's not actually my introduction to the show, but I do have some thoughts still, but that's just worth bearing in mind that I do have more experience with the show, so these are not my initial thoughts of the show, if that makes sense. So there will be spoilers as I talk about things that happen in this, but I will say it's a really solid introduction to what the show is about and the people who are involved, both in terms of Kirstie's children and the people who work for her. Really strong sense of the people there. But that being said, I was able to understand everybody's roles, having not even seen this. So, to the show's credit, you can actually just watch any episode and follow what's going on. It starts off with Kirstie asking True, her son, if he's embarrassed about her weight. And of course, he says all of the right things and is really supportive. And I think it's really telling where her mindset is from the very beginning of this episode. And it actually got quite heavy really early on because she mentioned that she was 118 pounds at the start of her career, and it was after her miscarriage that people started to refer to her weight gain. I am, of course, talking about magazines and things focusing on that, which is horrible. She said she gained 12 pounds around that time, and imagine somebody having a miscarriage and then focusing on the weight they gained either around that pregnancy or soon after it. That's disgusting and really a pretty horrible thing to have to hear. We then have something a little bit more lighthearted as her stylist is helping her find a dress for New Year, and this is obviously setting this around the end of 2009 leading into 2010 when the series was actually released. And the clothes in this, the dresses, are absolutely stunning. I think it's very clear that Kirstie wants to go out, she wants to look and feel good, but there's clearly something there that's stopping her, something very obvious, of course, that's her own perception of her self-image, stopping her from allowing herself to be fully excited about it. She then goes down to the lemur cage. We have a bit of an introduction to some of the animals. They're absolutely stunning, and paparazzi start to take pictures of her, which I hate. I hate it in general. But when you approach somebody's private property and start taking pictures that you're then going to sell to a magazine, that's just unacceptable. I think when you take pictures of people out and about, technically you can take pictures of whatever you want when you're out in public, but approaching somebody's private property, I think that's just crossing a line that is unforgivable. And we see the magazine, we see the photos, which is kind of a strange experience to see the situation being professionally filmed by the documentary and then seeing the pap picture, and it's not a flattering picture. And Kirstie is obviously really broken by this in the moment, and as I think Kyle pointed out, that's not what she looks like. And I know people can say, well, the camera doesn't lie, but at the same time, everybody, even the most drop-dead gorgeous, glamorous people who look so well put together and fit and healthy, they have angles that are not flattering. And I think that's something that's really important to remember. But when you're in the mindset that Kirstie is, that's very difficult to remember. And I think it's just vile. Anybody who takes those kinds of pictures and sells them to magazines, why would you ever want that? Why would you ever want to be that person? I think it's absolutely disgusting. And unfortunately, Kirstie is understandably not in the mindset to go out that evening. And it just so happens that Jim's wife, Jim, her handyman, she missed her flight or something, so she's not able to spend New Year's with Jim. So Kirstie and Jim actually have dinner and they spend time together, and they have a really, really meaningful conversation, at least meaningful to me as a viewer, about weight and what weight makes them feel like. And Kirstie said something that I think was really interesting, and she said, yes, of course, the paparazzi are annoying and those pictures are hurtful, but the thing that annoys her the most is letting herself get that way. And I think it's worth just reiterating, or I guess iterating, the fact that it can happen to anybody. And while it's very easy to blame ourselves for getting that way, and obviously everybody's responsible for their own health. Things can happen that mean we lose our ability to stay healthy, and I think, yes, it's important to acknowledge one's own role in their weight gain, but it's also important to acknowledge that there are things that we just don't expect. I don't know if this is true. I don't think this has been mentioned in the documentary, but I'm sure I read somewhere that Kirstie started to gain weight around menopause. So this is a medical change that's happening within her body. And obviously she didn't predict the weight gain. She just didn't make changes to her eating. It's not like she was, at least based on this article, that I don't even know if it was an article, just something that I read, that it just kind of crept up on her. It's not that she let herself go or that she made negative changes to her life. It's that this biological process obviously changed her metabolism, and that can be something that's difficult to monitor. So I think it's worth bearing in mind that, yes, it's important to take ownership and responsibility, but at the same time, there are things that can contribute that are outside of our control. And obviously, there's a point where you need to recognize that, but when is that time? So I just think it's worth mentioning there that ownership is important. There are a lot of factors that can contribute as well, though. We then have the weigh-in, and something I praised the series for, I'm going to have to backtrack, because I had praised the fact that they never mentioned Kirstie's weight. So the viewer wasn't going to compare themselves to Kirstie's weight or Kirstie's BMI, if you know how tall she is. And I thought that was a really good approach. They only mentioned how much weight she'd lost, not how much she weighed. However, this episode does actually establish that she is 230 pounds at this point, at the beginning, and I feel like her reaction when she saw the numbers was really telling. There was a little bit of confusion where she kind of thought that's how much she had to lose, not how much she actually weighed. But the point is that once she realised what the numbers were, she felt even worse about herself. Now, I'm not the kind of person who says don't step on the scales, just go by how you look and feel, because actually I think the numbers can be important, and for a lot of people they can be very motivational. But at the same time, it really helps to highlight that Kirstie felt one way, and then as soon as she heard the numbers, I guess it kind of hit home a little bit with just how much weight she was dealing with, but that made her feel even worse. And I think that that's really important, that for some people, knowing the numbers is beneficial, but they are just numbers. Seeing the numbers doesn't make her any heavier, but it might have made her feel that way. And I think that that's something that's worth bearing in mind if you do begin your own weight loss journey. If you are stepping on the scales for the first time in quite a while, the number might be higher than you think, but you are not gaining the weight in that process of stepping on the scales. You still look and feel exactly the way you did before you stepped on the scales. So I think that's important to remember. And she kept calling them stones. She wanted the numbers converted into British stone, and she kept calling them, like she would say 6 stones, which is absolutely adorable. Just for reference, we don't say stones in the UK, we say 6 stone, for example. I just thought that was very cute. And we do end with a little bit of happiness towards the end when she establishes that actually she has 90 pounds to lose, which is roughly what she was expecting. So she was definitely remotivated at the end when she kind of confirmed with herself that her weight loss journey is, or at least the goals on her weight loss journey are what she was expecting. So a decent way to end things. Definitely a really strong introduction to the series. I still think maybe they shouldn't have mentioned her weight, both for her sake, but then again, maybe it was motivational for her, for viewers to know her weight, but also for the viewers' sake, because now anybody who is watching it can work out her BMI. I'm not going to say what it is, but they can work that out and then compare it to themselves, and that's really unhealthy. So I don't love that, but I can kind of understand why they did it as well. So a strong episode to begin things. I know what happens in the next 4 episodes, but nevertheless, I enjoyed circling back to the beginning, watching this for the first time, and I'm looking forward to picking back up where I left off.